What's going on, everyone? Real Red Politics here. Welcome back to another video on my channel. Before I get into today's video, if you could take a second and leave a like, that would mean a lot. And if you are not yet subscribed or are new to the channel, please consider subscribing and helping me reach that goal of 300 subscribers by the end of this month. So, yesterday, January 7th, 2023, was the State of the Union Address. If you guys are not familiar with the State of the Union Address, it's the speech that the president gives every year, and it's supposed to be about the condition of the country and where the country is going. There was a little bit of that in there, but then, a lot of, I'm not going to say a lot, because you can't really, a lot is very subjective, because you can't really, it's not a measurable term, so to speak. But there was gaslighting of Republicans in there, Joe Biden gaslighted Americans, Republicans, all that kind of stuff, and we're going to go into some of the things he said, and we're going to talk about some correlations that he didn't make in a speech for obvious reasons. So first, we're going to talk about his disapproval rating, which is right now sitting at 52%. And everyone knows, or I guess, the speech it wasn't a good speech. Now, it wasn't his worst speech, but that's not saying it was a good speech, because believe me, it was not a good speech. I miss Trump's speeches. Trump's State of the Unions were some of the best State of the Unions that I think I've ever watched. There's a little bit of my bias showing, but it's true, just objectively. So right now, Biden's disapproval rating sitting at 52%, and look at January 2021. Pretty average. We go to August, and they completely swap, and the disapproval rating skyrockets. I use 538 because you can see, trends like this. You can look at different polls if you want to. I mean, 53% disapproval rating, 50, 51, 55%. This one was adjusted to 56%. There's, he's just, he's not, people don't people are disapproving of him. And the majority of Americans, in every poll that's come out lately, has said that America is not going in the right direction. So now we're going to look at a poll from CNN, and I know what you're thinking. Oh, CNN, okay. But this poll is consistent with polls from Fox News and whatnot. The poll here says, currently both 92% of Republicans and 78% of Democrats are dissatisfied with the direction of the country. And that's a poll from CNN. Let's talk about a couple things in his speech. About a minute into his speech, Chuck Schumer, who's the majority leader, the Senate majority leader, the President of the United States, referred to him as the minority leader. And it took him a little bit to correct to the fact that Chuck Schumer is the majority leader, not the minority leader. And Chuck Schumer, a member of his own party. And there's just so many things. I mean, he gaslighted Americans. For example, in his speech, he talked about some, he talked about Republicans are wanting to cut Social Security and whatnot. He got, booed into oblivion. He wasn't able to keep control. It was a disaster. The Republicans booed him a couple of times, and rightly so, because he was either saying stuff that was untrue, gaslighting Republicans, or gaslighting the entire country. For example, he said he created 12 million jobs. No, a lot of those jobs are jobs recovered, not jobs created. There's a difference, a big difference. And I'm actually going to, I'm going to play a couple of gaffes here.
Congratulations to Chuck Schumer. Another term as Senate Minority Leader. Some of my Republican friends want to take the economy hostage. I get it, unless I agree to their economic plans. There's some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority. Look, I'm a capitalist, but pay your fair share.
What? What the fuck?
Okay, so another thing, he said he's a capitalist, then immediately started spewing anti-capitalist ideas. He said He said he's a capitalist, and then he says that people, I guess the billionaires need to pay their fair share. Billionaires pay more in taxes. No, I'm just going to say the 1%. They pay more in taxes than anyone else in the country. Something to point out. I mean, I don't know how much. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the tax bracket, and I don't need to be familiar with the tax bracket for what I'm about to say to make sense. Billionaires, let's say they're taxed at 5%. 5% of $1 billion, for example, is a lot more money that's being paid in taxes than, let's say, someone that in the middle class that makes $80,000 a year, $60,000 a year, is being taxed 15%. 2% of $1 billion is a lot more money than 15% of like $60,000. And when we kind of take that into account, by saying they need to pay their fair share, what you are saying is the job creators in this country, the people that provide more and more jobs, you want to tax them more. The higher the taxes go, the less employees jobs are going to be able to provide, or the less jobs people are going to be able to provide to employees, because it takes investments, it takes, the willingness to work in order to be able to provide jobs. And he says a lot of this money goes into the billionaire's pocket. Sure, but a lot of the money goes back into investing into the company, investing into job quality, investing into all these other things that need to be invested to keep their company afloat. So like I said, they already pay more in taxes than any other American in the country. So saying they need to pay their fair share, right? After saying, oh, I'm a capitalist. No, you're not a capitalist if he's saying you need to pay. He's just spewing typical leftist things, typical liberal things. So no. Biden, you are not a capitalist. You just, he spewed a bunch of non-capitalist ideas, anti-capitalist ideas, and him wanting to overreach with the United States government. And another thing he talked about was how drugs are, pouring into this country. Well, newsflash, the majority of that, of all of that is coming from the southern border, which Biden has opened. Biden opened the border, and we had the highest levels of inflation on record. Let's take a look at that. That's inflation. We're going to talk about inflation in a second. Let's take a look at border crossings. Let's take a look at the end of 2020. And so these are, border patrol encounters, that kind of stuff. So these are, there are probably, higher numbers than this that just aren't being reported. So let's take a look at 2020 numbers. 57,000 law enforcement encounters. You probably think to yourself, okay, that's a lot. Hold that thought. 2023. We're barely 2 months into 2023. 251,000. Almost 252,000 law enforcement encounters. Let's take a look at 2022. 227. 57,000 doesn't look like so much now, does it? And this is let's look at April of 2020 versus April of 2022. 235,000 border crossings that law enforcement encountered in 2022 and 2020. And we can look at the correlation. Like I said, the majority of drugs is coming through the southern border. When you open up the border and you completely, trash the strong system Trump had in place, that's kind of your fault, Biden. It's completely his fault, but he's not taking responsibility for it. He's like, no, it can't be me. It's just ridiculous. He also mentioned inflation's down, and he was celebrating that inflation was down. So he's celebrating bringing inflation down based off the inflation he caused. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the inflation rate. December 31st, 2022, 6.45% inflation. Is that down? Sure. But let's look at November of 2020. This was under the Trump administration, 1.1%. Let's take a look at the highest it's been at, over 9% on June 30th. Let's look at, I don't know, June 2022, 0.65%. All of these high numbers. Okay, so March, it starts to go up from 1.68%, and then it doubles pretty much, continues to double again, doubles again. Well, okay, I'm saying doubles wrong. It doubles pretty much from February to March, roughly. Doubles from March to May, roughly. For doubling 5 would be 10, and it hasn't reached 10%. But my point is, it's going up by almost more than 2 percentage points every few months. February was 1.6, then it was 2.62, then it skyrockets to 4. October 31st skyrockets to 6, and then April 30th, 2022 to 8, to 9. And now he's celebrating it's down, even though it's his fault it's high in the first place. It's his fault we're in a recession. Just keep that in mind. Same thing with gas prices. He's saying that gas prices are down after he caused them to go up. That's nothing to celebrate about. You're acting like it's some big accomplishment when Trump's economic system was way stronger than what Biden could ever think to put in place. He inherited the fastest recovery in probably American history, and he destroyed it completely. Opened up the border, raised taxes. He caused the inflation, and when I say raise taxes, a lot of it is because of inflation. He boasts about, we increased Social Security. You didn't really when it correlates to inflation and having to account for inflation. You didn't increase anything because Americans are still paying more. And so when he says we're not taxing anyone more money if they make under $400,000, blah, blah, blah. Yes, look at inflation. It's caused the economy to go into shambles. It's caused Americans to have to pay more money for everything. Potatoes are expensive. Basic groceries that people want to buy or are struggling to buy because of the inflation that he's causing. And of course, he's not taking accountability for it. And I know some people want, he talks about, he talks about China a little bit. He's trying to be tough on China. He's not doing a good job. He let 2 balloons, I'm not going to go into depth about this because you guys, I'm sure, are already aware of it, but he let 2 balloons go over the country. He knew of their whereabouts beforehand and didn't get rid of the balloons until they were already past the country. What are some other things he talked about? He continues to blame Russia for the faults of him. He continues to blame inflation and gas prices on Russia. Of course he does. And another thing is he is continuing to, spout, we're banning assault weapons. First of all, he didn't even bother to define what an assault weapon is in his speech whatsoever. Now, typically speaking, when a liberal or a Democrat talks about assault weapons, they generally talk about AR-15s, one of the most common guns to use for self-defense, home defense, and whatnot. But then he talked about, and I couldn't believe my ears when I heard this, when I heard semi-automatic pistols. And in my mind, I'm like, you mean the only pistols we can own? He had to, what? Yes, of course pistols are semi-automatic. Those are the only ones we can legally own. And so, he supports the red flag laws. He's just going all government control on the economy, government control, basic rights that he's going after. And this is at the State of the Union, supposed to be one of the more formal speeches, and he talks about he'd also talked about, we have all these bipartisan bills. No. I don't think he knows what bipartisan means, because I'm sure a lot of them really were not bipartisan. He continued to say, democracy, 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 blah, 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 blah. The United States is not a democracy. I have said this many times. The United States is a constitutional republic under definition, not a direct democracy, not a representative democracy, not an autocracy, oligarchy, none of that. The United States is a constitutional republic by definition. It was made that way for a reason. He, continued to say, unemployment rate's the lowest, blah, blah, blah. I haven't checked the statistic on that, but I'm like 90% sure that that's also not true. He's gaslighting in that sense too. And, he was booed a couple of times by the Republicans, and rightly so. Like I said, when he was talking about tax, Republicans want to cut your Social Security and Medicaid or Medicare, whatever. The Republicans booed him, rightly so, because that's just untrue. There's just so many points in the State of the Union that were just wrong and lies. And, he was saying he said something along the lines he's going to cure cancer. You don't make promises you can't keep, because that's a big promise that you're going to cure cancer. And I don't remember if he outright stated he was going to cure it, but he kind of went along the lines of that's something we need to work towards, or something we need to do. Like, sure, yeah, I agree with that. But, bringing in all these other issues and basically making a promise that the United States is going to cure cancer, it's just a very difficult promise to make. And, there are other issues there are other points I'm not going to focus on. This video's already gone on long enough. And, my point is at least at the end of this State of the Union, he didn't say, go get him. If you remember, in his last State of the Union, at the very end, he said, go get him. Yeah, everyone was confused by that. And I don't really have anything else to say on this. It was a mess. If you want, you can go on YouTube, watch the whole State of the Union. You don't really need to. He didn't really say anything that was worth mentioning. I guess, okay, he's wanting to cut secret hotel fees and airline fees. Okay, fine. I don't have a problem with that. But he was, cherry picking a lot of his statistics, and a lot of them weren't even really right. It was a mess. Him yelling at Republicans, unable to keep control of the room. There were times when they would clap, trolling wise or sarcastically, and he just didn't know what to say. His brain would shut off. It was something. But that's enough of my rant. So, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you agree or disagree with, and let me know whether or not you watched the State of the Union and what you thought was laughable, and if there are any good points that I missed, which there might have been maybe one or two. Anyways, that's all I have for today, guys. So stay tuned for more political content coming your guys' way.